welcome back to the Orangebloods Modcast. As you can see, it's going to be three of us in this Brady Bunch kind of square, so there's no catch around. But we've got Alex Dunlap up in the top square. We got Jason Suchomel in the bottom square. Fellas, first of all, Jason, how happy are you? Just a quick sidebar. Your kids went back to school today, right? I mean, did you push them out the car? Did you go to a slow roll and push them out? Like, how good are you feeling?
Yeah, it's a good day. I think I mentioned it last week, year and a half, dude. I got 4 of them at home, so they're all at school today. And I told the Orangebloods group on Slack, we had 4 kids we're at 4 different schools. So all in all, my wife did the driving. I think it was about an hour and a half drive time. So we gotta figure that part out in the mornings. But I've got the house to myself, brother. So as long as the dog doesn't bark, there's no distractions. I feel good right about now, man.
Wait, four different schools?
Yeah. So I got elementary, middle, and then 2 in high school. And my son is taking some advanced culinary class, which whatever, good for him. So he goes to a different high school for that class. And he doesn't only go for that class. He spends the whole day. So he's basically going every other day. He's bouncing back and forth between 2 high schools. Such a weird time. But yeah, so today he's at his new school. So we've got 4 kids at 4 different schools. We've got practice this afternoon. My wife and I I don't know how the hell pickup's going to work because we have to call my parents or something. And my son's 16. I'm like, get your damn driver's license and you can take care of some of this yourself, man. But whatever. Awesome. Good day, dude. They're at school. No complaints.
Jason, man, the day that I turned 16, my wild horses couldn't have kept me away from that driver's license office.
Alex, yes. I'm the same way, but you know what? It's a new era, dude. Like only one of my son's friends out of 8 or 9 of them has his license. And I talk to other parents and they're just like, I don't know, because they're all doing this virtual stuff. They don't have to get in their car to go drive and see their friends the way we did, right? But kids just aren't beating down the door to get their license. Like I'm just saying, my birthday, I think the morning of my birthday, I was in line to take that test. Yeah, man, so.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Is it just, we get act old because back in our day, yes. It was like going outside was like the thing that you wanted to do, and being inside was the punishment.
I can't get my son out of his room now.
Yeah, now going outside and playing outside is the punishment, and being inside is like the reward. So things have changed. But speaking of rewards, though, Alex, we have been rewarded with a lot of practice access to see the Longhorns, more than we normally get, which I know has made you happy. And Alex, I want to start with you. I don't want to overthink this. Let's just start with the most obvious conversation, because there is still a quarterback debate that's going on, a quarterback competition more so that's there. Alex, you've been out to practice. All 3 of us have actually been out to just about every practice. Give me your impressions. Alex, I'll start with you for what you've seen from both of the quarterbacks, Casey Thompson and Hudson Card.
Well, it's been very interesting to watch. Of course, we've talked about how it was going to be the main focus of this camp is how those guys look. It's been a while since we've had a true quarterback controversy, and it's clear as what it is. Anwar, you've talked to Coach Sarkisian after practice. I believe it was a couple of days ago when he said it's the hardest quarterback battle he's had since was it after Matt Leinart left, or was it was
Matt Castle and Leinart.
Okay, so I mean
Carson Palmer.
After Palmer. Oh, all right. So that goes back a long ways. And I believe him. It's tough out there when you watch these guys. They both look really good. The real question to me would be, after those guys, what is there still left in the cupboard? Because after those 2 guys, there certainly is a real big drop off. But between the 2 of them, they both look good. They're both putting good zip on the ball. I've talked to you about it, Anwar. I feel like Casey Thompson, maybe his placement is and the catchability of his balls could be a little bit better. But Hudson sure spins that thing. He throws it with such a beautiful spiral. He's a little bit more natural throw over the football. And honestly, over the course of maybe it's just that last practice on Monday, or what day is it today? Thursday. So that last practice on Wednesday after they came back from the break, after the first 4 practices, I was beginning to think that Hudson might be kind of taking a little bit of a lead, maybe looking a little bit better, more composed. With that being said, they've both had their moments throughout camp. I would not be surprised to hear either one of them be named the starter. We've talked about it sort of off the air on our own, and I've just said to myself, well, geez, if one of these guys might be more likely to maybe just head to the transfer portal if he didn't win the job, it'd almost be like you want to give that guy the job because if one of these guys goes and it's just, Card or just Thompson and the current backups that Texas has on the roster, that could be real trouble if one of them gets hurt. So I'm like Jason. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them kind of both play, or this competition continues into the season, maybe into conference play. And I wish I had a good answer for you to say I have a definitive lean one way or the other. I truly don't. But if I did lean the slightest of ways right now, for some reason, these last couple of days has me leaning slightly Hudson Card.
What about you, Jason? What you've been out there as well? What have you seen?
Well, my biggest takeaway from all that is that Alex might owe me a free lunch if in the end, if it ends up being Hudson.
Well, that doesn't necessarily, that won't
That's
necessarily, the votes will be up to you
concede.
guys. The votes will be up to you guys to decide whether or not Casey Thompson's a good quarterback.
I think you need to concede at that. If he doesn't win the job, I think you need to concede. But I echo just about everything that Alex said, Anwar. You watch those two throw the ball at practice, and it just looks a lot different than the other quarterbacks on campus. And those other guys are young; they're freshmen. Charles Wright, a true freshman. Let's give them a little bit of time. But to me, the biggest takeaway is the drop off from the two guys that are vying for that starting job compared to the guys below them. Now, like Alex, it's hard to pull one up in front of the other. I mean, Steve Sarkisian said it himself. He said, I think he even said it's going to be the hardest choice of his career. I believe, he mentioned the one at USC being tough. I think correct me if I'm wrong on where I think he said this will be the toughest decision of his career. Ultimately, I kind of agree, Alex. That's the first time I've heard you say that, but I do tend to think that Casey throws maybe what I'd call a more catchable ball, for what lack of better description. That's how you described it. I mean, just kind of, you watch it come out of his hand and it just seems like it just is soft when the receivers catch it. And that's not to say he doesn't have arm strength or anything, but Hudson, even on the shallow crossing routes, tends to put a little bit of extra mustard on there. I saw one the other day that he did that skipped off the hands. I think it was Keelan Robinson, the running back. And I'm thinking, okay, that's a throw you probably want to take a little bit off. But Hudson with his arm talent and his arm angles, the things he can do, and the ball, I mean, it's beautiful when he throws it. He could do so many different things with the ball. So ultimately, I think the proof is going to be in the pudding. The first scrimmage is this Saturday. They'll have another one the following Saturday. It's one thing to watch these guys kind of throw it around without a lot of adversity. Let's see how they respond at the scrimmages. And frankly, Alex, you kind of said it, and let's see how they respond in that first game, man. I mean, what I'm expecting, because Sark said it, I'm expecting he will name a starter. I don't know who it's going to be, but I'm expecting he will name a starter. I'm fully expecting, I don't care if it's Thompson or Card, I don't know whoever he names the starter is going to hold on to that job without having the other person breathing down their neck. Maybe it turns into kind of a situation where both guys are playing, where they really have to try to resolve it in season. Because I think whoever the starter is, listen, I know Sark said, hey, it's nice to have two good options to choose from, but hey, they're both inexperienced, man. They're both going to probably struggle at some points. God forbid one of them gets injured. You're going to need both of these quarterbacks at some point. It's not inconceivable. And I know this is not what Texas fans want to hear, but if you're being objective, it's not inconceivable that he names one guy the starter. And in week 2, he's thinking, man, this is not going the way I thought it was going to be. We're going to give the other guy some snaps. So I think regardless of who is named the starter, and I know that is the sexiest story of fall camp by a significant margin. I get it. I think they're going to need, and we're going to see both those guys play in the fall. But to go back to the initial question on where I don't have a feel. I know Alex said maybe slightest of favors towards Hudson Card. I guess I'd probably follow in line with that, but nothing's going to surprise me in terms of whose name's a starter. And I don't think we'll have a clue on that probably till not this Saturday, maybe next, after that second scrimmage, we'll have a better feel for that.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. And it's weird, because Alex and I have stood together a couple of times during practice, and, we're looking to see, okay, does this give the guy an advantage? Does this throw give the guy an advantage? And you'd see one guy do something like, oh, maybe that's it. And then you see another guy do another thing like, okay, well, maybe that's it. And it's really tough to know. And it's almost, it's almost like you can see what you want to see with these quarterbacks. But what I'm interested to know is, Jason, you said something, and Alex, I want you to think about this, but we start thinking about how close this competition is, right? And the tiebreakers that are going to be probably the variables that need to be factored in. There's a good chance that if Casey loses, he transfers. I mean, I know you said they need both regardless of who, but there's a good chance if Casey loses his job in 2 weeks, he packs up his stuff, he goes to another program, sits there and learns, and then comes back, competes for somewhere else starting in the winter, in the spring. So if all things are equal, and Casey is probably more likely to leave than Hudson would be, do you think Sarkisian has to factor that into his decision-making, Jason?
I would, but in hearing Sark speak, I think maybe it was at Media Days. It was maybe he said that he kind of said, "Hey," he goes, "Yeah, I'm aware that's an issue, of course," but he basically said he's not worried about that. And I guess if he's a bigger man than me, which doesn't take much, insert jokes here, probably I think he would just go with his gut and not let that be a factor. But he kind of said, "Hey, it's just the way of the world nowadays. You can't, he's really not worried about that." But how can that not be in the back of your mind? Like you said, if all things are truly equal and they are, 50-50, truly 50-50, then maybe you do that. Give Casey the nod, or maybe you do what I've suggested, and maybe you try to play both. Maybe you give each one a couple series. You give Casey the first quarter and give Hudson the second quarter or something, and see who kind of catches lightning in a bottle potentially when the lights are on in actual game action. So I like to think he wouldn't, but it's human nature, Anwar. I mean, I think that's probably something that's going to be in the back of Sark's mind.
What about you, Alex? What do you think?
I think it would be kind of, wouldn't it be weird timing for Casey Thompson if he lost the quarterback battle, just to enter the transfer portal right then? Wouldn't it be something like, well, I'll play for the rest of the season, see what happens, and then after the season's over, I'm headed to the portal? Because not only is this guy now ahead of me, and he's been ahead of me for the season, and he's younger than me, but now we got some kind of Malik Murphy coming in. We got all these. It isn't like Sark's not going to have a quarterback or two in every class moving forward at this point. So if you've already been recruited over at that spot, I feel like, yeah, you'd want to transfer out of there. But by then there would be better scholarship quality depth, at least available coming into the program for 2022. I would think if you would think that Casey was going to want to transfer out just immediately and just skedaddle, not even play the 2021 season, then that, if I had that intelligence and I knew that was something that was bound to happen, then it would have to cross my mind. I think everything has to cross your mind when you're making such a monumental decision. This is the CEO of your on-field product in your first year as head coach. I mean, it's a pretty big deal. So I take anything into consideration. But Anwar, do you think that it was, I know you're plugged in with certain people. Do you think it's on the table that if Casey Thompson, that he would leave just before the 2021 season?
Yeah, basically just what I've been able to gather is that he would have the opportunity to sit at another program and just learn that offense throughout the year. Let it just be a learning year, sit on the sidelines, because he's going to sit on the sidelines at Texas, might as well sit on the sidelines at a program that he's probably going to play at next year, have this year as another learning year, and then hit the ground running in the winter. So, there's also a thought process too, from a recruiting standpoint, Alex. You might have some opportunities to solidify yourself now, as opposed to worrying about the 2022 class and what quarterbacks might be signed in that class. Like, you already know, like, you're part of that incoming quarterback class. So, you may have some potentially more options now than maybe after the season, potentially. But everything was always done, Alex, with the thought process that Casey Thompson graduates early and has extra eligibility. So if he doesn't win the competition, he has the opportunity to transfer.
To me, that's I understand what you're saying. That's a little short-sighted for me. If he was to transfer, let's say, end of August, okay, and he transfers to some other school and sits a year, I get the concept of, hey, I can practice, I can learn the offense, get acclimated with the coaches, the university, of all that stuff. But if he's going to any program that's even halfway worth its salt, he's not going to be guaranteed the starting job there. Why not stay in Austin where, like I said, and I think Sark said it too, there's a pretty good chance he's going to get to play at some point this year. I see both sides of it, man, but stick it out, battle like Alex said, battle it out this fall, stay at Texas. And then, you'll have a much clearer picture in December if Hudson Card is the guy, and if Hudson Card is named the starter and he plays the whole season and plays very well, and he's basically taking control the way Sam Ellinger did at a young age, then okay, it's time for me to cut bait and get out of here. And you still have all spring to go through practice and do all that stuff. So, I can see both sides of it to me, but if I was advising my son or anyone else, I would say, hey, stick it out in Austin for this one semester and, see what happens. Then you'll have a much clearer picture, and you're not going to be that much further behind than you would be if you transfer it in late August.
Makes sense. All right. So Alex, let me toss it back to you. Now we'll move from the quarterback conversation. We just had to take care of that because clearly we can't ignore that.
You got to pay the bills.
You're right. Pay the bills. So give me your overall thoughts of what you have seen out in practice, Alex. You've been out there. How many times have we been able to get? Like 4 times, I think, Alex?
Yeah, it'll be 5 after today. So
yeah, today as we're filming on Thursday. So give me maybe some of the guys that have stood out to you, Alex, some of the things that you've noticed, whether it's players, coaches, just give the general public what Alex has been seeing.
Think players who stood out?
Yeah. Players, coaches, anything that you've seen that's kind of stood out to you over the past 4 practices.
I mean, how long do we have? I mean, it's
the internet.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna reach the end.
Okay, so just on offense. Okay, so on offense, just with the offensive line, I like what I'm seeing from the offensive line. The starters look about like we figured they would have looked, but the one thing is Derek Kerstetter is going to be over at right tackle. It looks like Jake Hudson will be at center, and Andre Carrick, it looks like he'll be that kind of 6-man swing tackle. I really liked what I've seen out of Hayden Connor, number 76. He's playing at both tackle and at both guard positions. I almost feel like he's probably the 7th man off the bench right now, considering his versatility and just how good he's looking, how quickly he's picking everything up with all these different inside zone run schemes, or in the inside zone and the outside zone run schemes. I like how Tyler Johnson's been coming on for the last couple of days. He was Coach Flood was extremely tilted at him at first, and he wasn't even getting to work with the third group. But these last couple of days, I've been watching the offensive line really, really closely, just because of our seating arrangements. It gives you a really good view into what's going on with the offensive line, and I like to watch them anyway. And I feel like Tyler Johnson is another guy who's been kind of coming on that a lot of people had written off. I'd kind of written off to start this camp. I said, boy, he's got such recruiting pedigree, but if he hasn't done anything by now to even be making a wave on to the 2 deep with Coach Flood, maybe it's time to start worrying. But he started working with the 2s, and he's getting a lot of attaboys from Coach now and stuff. So, I mean, for me, I guess Hayden Connor stuck out a lot. Just as sort of the surprise. He's a true freshman. I feel like he's going to be pretty involved this year, especially if there's an injury. At the tight ends, I can't even start talking about them without mentioning Jatavian Sanders. He's one of the most impressive athletes on the whole team already. He's going to be a weapon already. I was a little bit tilted that he wasn't going to get a look at defensive end or one of these edge spots, but after seeing him at tight end, I just don't care. He's got soft hands. He's a big physical beast that just has these soft, I don't know, there's like ballerina hands. You like these other tight ends when they're running their crossing routes and their drags and stuff, they put out their hands to frame the football, and see it in. And when the football hits, it kind of, you can hear a slap. It's so crazy with Jatavian. It just hear like a, his hands just suck in the football. He's just very, very natural. He's a definite playmaker. At the wide receivers, I'm a little bit concerned about the outside wide receivers, especially with Joshua Moore getting banged up at Wednesday's practice, or I guess previous to Wednesday's practice. He did not participate on Wednesday because probably the 2 best wide receivers that Texas has, at least with the highest upside, Jordan Whittington and Xavier Worthy, are both now playing out of the slot. And with all these good tight ends you have, how many 4 wide receiver sets is Texas really going to run where they can get 2 slot wide receivers on the field at the same time? I feel like on the outside, Troy O'Meary looks like he's banged up. Looks like a little bit hurt to me still. He's got this big sleeve kind of brace thing on his knee. And, just the guys behind them, the Marcus Washingtons, the Alvonte Woodards, these dudes, we've just sort of seen them. There's some young guys with some appeal, like, guys like Casey Kane and stuff like this as far as outside wide receivers. But as far as the outside guys, I just, the inside group has been a lot more effective. And then on defense, I'll just pretty clearly to me, the defensive line looks good. I don't know about you guys. I'm just stunned that it looks like Luke Brockermeyer is still, it's been 4 practices and he's still the starting middle linebacker lining up next to DeMarvion Overshown with the first group. I thought that was something kind of weird. That might just be a day 1 thing, but then day 2 comes around, day 3, day 4. I'm sure we'll go out there on day 5 today and it'll be, number 0 or number 47 out there with the middle linebackers. Definitely a surprise to me. And then the other, just one final thing on defense is that they've been coming out in sort of a base defense with 3 inside linebackers, 3 down linemen, 1 sort of D end outside linebacker edge guy, and then 4 defensive backs. When they do that, they have Obi Ogwofu there that's sort of lined up as an outside linebacker, speed rusher type. So, even though it's not at that edge spot, that's where Ray Thornton's playing, the LSU transfer. Ovi Ogwofu, it looks like, depending on how much they play in that base package, is going to be a starter on the defensive side of the football. It's just a matter of how often they're in base and how often they go to a 5 DB package. When they do go to a 5 DB package, another interesting thing is you don't have a guy that looks like kind of like your true nickel back that's coming in. You just have one of the safeties that's, because Brendan Schooler comes in whenever Obi goes out. And so you just have one of the safeties handling the slot wide receivers and more of a 3 safety look. And you can argue, and there's been arguments on the board about whether you call one of those guys spinning down a nickel or what it is. To me, it looks like 3 safeties, one of whom is playing nickel. So yeah, just from front to back, that's sort of some interesting things that I've seen, but of course there are other things that we could dovetail into.
I'll give you mine's, and then I'll let Jason let you hop in. Alice, I really liked what I've seen out of David Benda during practices. I think he just seemed like he floats from drill to drill while he's out there. I agree with you on Ovi. I feel like his first step, just getting off the ball from that snap is very impressive. Like you can see him, especially the way he bends coming off the edge. You could see the pass rush ability that's within him. Like you, I'm a little concerned about the receivers. We were out there. What is today? Thursday. So Tuesday. And once we got past some of the bigger name guys, that we saw a couple of drops on some easy passes. And I know you can't judge it just off of those type of things, but there's certain guys that, when you mention a guy like Jatavian Sanders, we don't see that. You don't see those kind of drops. And so seeing some of these other receivers with a little bit of drops and wasn't a huge fan of. You're always sitting in front of the offensive line. So since you're over there, I just defer to you on that side. And I just like, all right, he's got that. And back in the day, Alex played offensive line, folks. I know it's hard to believe, but judging him, and he wasn't a long snapper.
I was a backup offensive lineman. I played more defensive end, but I certainly got coached up and yelled at by a bunch of offensive line coaches.
And then obviously there's the obvious the guys like the Bijans of the world where that just goes without saying. Like sometimes we overlook it just because we know he's so good, but super impressive. There was a drill out there where you take one of the pads and you slam it against the guy as he's running, and Bijan's running full steam, and Stan Drayton tries to slam him and just has to shake his hand because he realized like that guy, you better brace yourself a little bit more for us. So, there's also some guys that just off the top of my head jump out. What about you, Jason?
Yeah, y'all covered it pretty well. Alex was pretty thorough. A lot of the things I've seen too. When I'm there, a lot of times I'm taking pictures. Can't really see the defense as much. I'm more focused on the offense just because where we're stationed, they're closer and not even worth trying to take pictures of the defense. So I don't really watch the defense that much. Hopefully maybe that changes today, depending on where we're set up or where the players are aligned. But offensive line, I mentioned in my notes the other day, I do think there's a confidence in Hayden Connor, the true freshman, like Alex said. I mean, just listening to Kyle Flood talk to him. Christian Jones looks like $1 million. I mean, he's the guy I think that Kyle Flood probably walked into the room and goes, okay, that's the kind of offensive lineman I'm used to having in Alabama. I mean, the guy is just huge and just, I mean, looks like his jersey's about to explode off of him. My most interesting takeaway for me is I'd love to just have Coach Flood mic'd up and be able to just have everybody hear that. Now, you'd have to have the dump button because there's a lot of cussing going on, which is pretty, all those offensive line coaches have the same kind of personality. Dogs, yeah, they are, man. But he's got some good one-liners and good zingers at his guys. And I tell you what, man, if they make a misstep, he's going to let them know about it. And he's going to let them know about it where everybody can hear it. I mean, if it's the simplest drill, he's like, you should know this BS by now. And I mean, every other word in the book. But, you know, the best line I heard from the other day, one guy messed up a couple times and he finally just looked at it. He goes, I feel like you effing hate me, because the guy just kept screwing up. So I love listening to him coach. Jeff Banks is the same with the tight ends. And then two other takeaways. Jatavian Sanders. I mean, I've seen Jatavian in high school, but I saw him at that first practice. I'm like, damn, he looks a lot bigger than I remember him.
He's a beast.
So, I mean, I see him standing next to Jared Wiley, who's huge. What is he, 6'7" Wiley or something like that? And Jatavian doesn't get lost in that at all. I mean, he fits in just perfectly, and really good athlete, catches the ball cleanly. And then the other thing, like both y'all said, is the wide receivers. Troy O'Mary, like his leg is wrapped up. He's got a brace, and I mean, it looks like it's almost mummified. It's so wrapped up. He's clearly not 100%. If Joshua Moore is out with any kind of extended action, which I don't think anybody's too concerned, but they've got to have those two guys healthy. I mean, they've got, you got Whittington, you got Xavier Worthy, but it's a pretty big drop off after those top 3-4 guys. So you can't have arguably your top two receivers, or two of your top receivers, I should say, limited or out. So they need to hope those guys can get healthy and stay healthy. If not, if they're, we're projecting a few weeks down the road, if they're forced to miss a game or a couple games, either the first game or early in the season, if O'Mary has issues with his knee again, that's a bit worrisome for me if you're a Texas fan. But so I think keeping an eye on that wide receiver room and the health of those guys over the next few weeks will be something we need to watch for.